Have you ever been discriminated against at work, or you have discriminated someone else? Hello, my successful and healthy earthlings. Mihaela Gush here, naturopath and founder of the Natural Health Podcast. In this episode today, you're going to learn just how discrimination at work impacts your health. I'm going to go through some statistics from the Human Rights Commission on discrimination here in Australia and how discrimination affects your health. I'm going to go through 3 tips to overcome work discrimination. At the end of this episode, I'm going to give you an opportunity to join a health and success-oriented community by clicking and join the newsletter below. Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast. We bring awareness to sustainable health in the business hustle space. Natural Health Podcast is perfect for the high-performing, business-minded individuals who want to work with their biochemistry to achieve health and optimal success and optimal health. It's Mondays with Mihaela. That's right, me. Thank you so much for tuning in. Absolutely love, and appreciate your support. On Mondays, I'm here to provide you with simple, savvy, and sustainable health hacks to optimize your health. Let's get into today's episode right now, because what I'm going to be talking about is discrimination. This topic has been a huge one and has been brought up by Parliament, been brought up by workplaces, being brought up by individuals, and I'm here on Natural Health Podcast to bring it up to you and your attention. I mean, you may think you don't discriminate, or you may think you haven't been discriminated against, but I bet you it has happened to you sometime. I don't know if it's been in the workplace, if it's been on the streets. I'm not too sure of your sex, ethnic background, your age, and so many other things you can take in consideration, even your disability or ability, and you may have been discriminated against. So let's have a look at what discrimination in Australia looks like. Okay, so discrimination from gender, race, disability, and age in Australia and New Zealand is still widespread, with 82% of survey respondents, the equivalent of 15.5 million professionals, acknowledge that it is happening today in workplace. And you could probably agree to that. You're like, yes, it is happening. It's currently happening in my workplace, so it's currently happening to me. The Robert Walters report embraces difference found that 9 out of 10 women feel discrimination exists in today's workplace, compared to 73% of men. So there's a lot more women that believe discrimination is happening. So wonder why that is. So the thing is I actually used to work for the Australian Human Rights Commission, and which deals with, discrimination against disability, sex, age, and so forth, so many other discrimination things. And it's interesting because it really opened up my eyes to discrimination. I mean, I saw it on the news and it happened here and there somewhere for me, but I didn't really understand how widespread it was in the workplace. Most of the complaints brought up to the Australian Human Rights Commission were from the workplace. Individuals being discriminated against for their age, for their sex, for their race, for their ethnicity, for their beliefs, for their, for their gender identity, and so forth. It was kind of heartbreaking when I realized what was happening. And it just really brought things home, and I was like, wow, this is huge. And then, interesting, the fact was, a few years after that, similar things happened to me. So it's interesting that I got to experience individuals complaining about it and going through the process of it, and then it directly happened to me. So this is why this topic hits home, hits heart, right? And I want to get it out there that if you have been discriminated against, you are not alone, and you are here to talk and, make a change here in Australia. So let's have a look at some statistics, right? In 2018-19, the Commission received about nearly 14,000 inquiries, 13,989 to be specific. The majority of the inquiries, 53%, were received via the information hotline. So you can actually call up and say, hey, I have this, what can I do, right? Let's talk about the main issues that people called up about. The main issues, number one, was disability discrimination. That hurts my heart. I can't believe that's happening. The other one was discrimination on grounds covered by the Sex Discrimination Act, which is 12%. The other one was general employment matters, which included harassment and bullying, which was 12%. The other one was racial discrimination, included racial hatred, 9%. That is a large number. The other one is human rights, relevant issues including immigration detention, 5%. So the available demographics data indicate that in 2018-19, 48% complaints were lodged by females, 46% were lodged by individual males, and then the other 6% was lodged by other categories. This is amazing. So we're saying that more women are saying it's happening, but we're having the same amount of men and women calling up and talking about it, right? So it's quite interesting. Still a little bit of stigmas around sexes and so forth. But let's just have a look at quickly. I thought I'll put it in there, a little bit of a topic about women in leadership, right? When we look at current leadership here in Australia or any, big organization, what do you see? You see a board of men in suits. Now, where are the women, right? Let's have a look at. So the latest results from 2019 and 20 showed that women hold 14.6% of chair positions and 28.1% of dictatorships, and represent 18.3% of CEOs and 32.5% of key management personnel. 30% of boards and governing bodies have no female directors. Okay. By contrast, only 0.4% of boards had no male directors. So when you're looking at it, there are males everywhere. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and I'm all for the person who's right for the job. All for that 100%, but I'm all for every individual receiving the right opportunity to be a CEO, to be on the board. And and all of this discrimination can come up on so many different forms. You can come in discrimination, I'm specifically talking about here in the workplace, can come in the aspect of, you're not getting a pay rise due to being female or male, or due to being a certain race, due to being a certain age. So some people may not actually give someone a promotion because they're 60 and they're like, oh, well, they're going to retire in 5 years. What's the point of putting them in leadership? You can't do that. You cannot do that. The individual has to be given the opportunity, and then they're able to make that choice. Is this something that they wish to do? Maybe for the last 5 years of their working life, they want to be in management. And you know what? These individuals hold so much knowledgeable information and managerial skills that they should be the ones in management. But let's get off to that little rant. So as you can see, discrimination happens in all different types of aspects in work. But the thing that's not touched upon is how this affects your health, right? So how does discrimination affect your health? Because you may be discriminated against, or you may be the one that's discriminating against, but little do we actually think and go, how is this actually affecting the individual that is getting discriminated against? How is it affecting them? We don't really think about that. But what I've got to tell you here is that evidence-based research and interventions to address systemic institutional racism have been more than urgent at the moment. They are needed. Research on stress reveals that perceived stress and inadequate social support increases the risk of physical and mental health conditions and decreases opportunities for success. Okay. However, high levels of social support from peers and supervisors have protective effects on mental health and reduce the risk of illness-related absences. In contrast, low level of support increases the risk of psychiatric disorders. So if you are working or you are running a workplace where discrimination is normal, and I mean any type of discrimination, not just race discrimination, then you are setting up a workplace for psychological injuries. It's like, when is it going to happen? It's not if is it going to happen. It's going to be, when is it going to happen? Self-care activities such as getting enough sleep, exercise, spiritual related activities, and relaxation techniques reduce stress and improve health. These coping these are coping mechanisms, and I have spoken about coping mechanisms in my previous episode that you can click on, the 5 most used coping methods by individuals and which ones are most useful and what to do. Check that out. So what we need to look at is, this is a study I looked at, and this study is specifically looked at university faculty, and this was specific in race discrimination. So they actually looked at race discrimination models share 3 elements that inform how experience of racism may influence unrepresented minorities' health. So this study actually looked at someone who's getting discriminated based upon their race, how it impacts their health, and they came up with 3. 1, satisfaction serves to maintain discrimination in social spaces. 2, life course effects result in adverse health conditions despite increasingly better opportunities or social advantages. 3, chronicity and magnitude of discrimination, such as life events, reduced opportunities via exclusion and self-isolation, they all contribute to stress that negatively affects health. So it is a flow-on effect. It's not just you get discrimination and you get mental health. No. What happens is you get discriminated against, you don't get that opportunity to be in a managerial role, you get socially excluded, you don't get opportunity to meet clients, and therefore that reduces your chance of overall getting more money, having more authority, getting a higher status, and you're just pushed down, and all of that adds on and it impacts your health, okay? So you get a bit of an understanding what happens when someone is discriminated against. It's not just they're discriminating and all of a sudden they're depressed. No, it is a whole flow-on effect. So I looked into a study which looked at the relationship between work stress, discrimination, coping strategies, and physical and depressive symptoms among early and mid-career URM faculty in research universities. This was a really interesting study. Across the sample, chronic workplace stress in conjunction with adverse life events and perceived discrimination was widespread, okay? And now they looked at how it affected your health. Let's have a look at what they said. Okay, so they looked at and said, discriminatory encounters with colleagues or students exacerbated a sense of exclusion, not belonging, and being hypervigilant. This is so important. I've spoken about being hypervigilant before, how bad it is for your health. When your stress response is overly activated and you're just waiting for someone to attack you, you know it's going to happen. If it's going to come from your manager, from your coworker, it's going to happen. You just don't know when. So you're hypervigilant. So what does that mean? Your stress response is through the roof, right? How does that affect your health? Well, it's going to affect your health in a negative way because you are completely stressed out. Your sympathetic nervous system is overly activated. Your body is chewing through minerals and vitamins like crazy. You're not sleeping well, and the list goes on, and you can just imagine what's going to happen. Let's go into the next one. The everyday stress of discriminating experiences depletes respondents' physical and mental energies. They expend high levels of emotional labor, often termed as racial battle fatigued. So as you can see here, these individuals in this study dealt with racial battle fatigue because they were just exhausted emotionally, physically, mentally. It exhausts you. If you've been through this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Furthermore, it diminishes opportunities to engage in intellectual labor required to advance their careers. So if you're being isolated, you're not going to be invited to those meetings. You're not going to be invited to those lunches and dinners where you are able to intellectually discuss whatever it is that you want to discuss, maybe even improve some studies or work on your work stuff. You're going to be excluded, right? Prior studies employing biological markers reveal that the brain's biological response to repeated acts of discrimination and racism, whether real or perceived, raises an individual's cortisol levels that can increase inflammation that cause heart disease, diabetes, sinus infections, and obesity in this instance. I have spoken about heart disease and work stress. Check out the episode that I've spoken about that. I spoke about heart disease and work stress, how it affects you. So here they're saying because you're getting discriminated against, it's going to raise your cortisol, which is going to raise inflammation, which then can lead to heart disease, diabetes, sinus infections, and even obesity, right? This is mind-blowing research. Moreover, multiple and simultaneous stresses without adequate coping strategies often manifest in physical conditions such as increased susceptibility to infections or psychological conditions including anxiety, burnout, and depression. This is huge. How many individuals are getting burnt out at work? The question is, are they burnt out because they're getting discriminated against? That is the question that needs to be addressed. Are they depressed? Are they anxious because they're getting discriminated? This is mind-blowing. I could go on and hours about this, but I'm going to keep it short like I always do for you guys, under 20 minutes here. So what I wanted to put in here is also that The Australian Human Rights Commission research indicates that 60% of people who experienced age discrimination found it affected their self-esteem or mental health and caused them stress. Others also reported that it had a negative impact on their family or career or made them consider changing occupation or retraining. The research found that many people who experience age discrimination in the workplace subsequently give up looking for work or thinking about retiring or accessing their superannuation. Other impacts include, but are not limited to, housing stress, barriers to accessing benefits of the age pension, outdated skills, social exclusion, unemployment and long-term unemployment, involuntary early retirement. And I've just spoken about here age and cultural discrimination. There's so many other ones, like I spoke about disability discrimination. This is absolutely extraordinary. There's so much happening. If you want to know more, let me know and I can go into a specific one and give you more details about it. But either way, whatever discrimination it is, we can see that it is impacting our health. It is impacting your health. It is impacting your employees' health. It is impacting your team's health. So, what 3 tips to overcome work discrimination. Let's get into it. Number one, not even number one. Overall, it starts with you. That's right. You are the one that can make a change. They always say, you need more than one to make a change. No, in this instance, you are the one that can make a change. One is be kind and don't judge. Okay. Don't judge and discriminate against individuals. Number 2 is educate yourself. If you're feeling like you're judging someone on something and you may have someone coming into your workplace that's new, let's say they're a culture that you have never dealt with. Okay, let's say, for example, they're Croatian, right? And they do things that you don't understand. Educate yourself about their culture. Allow them to even educate you. Ask them questions. Be part, okay? Don't judge, okay? Number 3 is if you see, hear, feel discrimination in your business or in your workplace, call it out ASAP right now, right here, okay? You need to call it out. It cannot be just put under the carpet. Can't be just put a blind eye to it because it's going to affect that individual's health. And unfortunately, you're just waiting for that individual to get sick. It's not if they're going to go sick, it's when are they going to get sick. So there you have it. You have some tips here how to overcome work discrimination. And like I said, it starts with you. If you've learned anything about this or if you've been discriminated against work, please put in the comments below if you feel comfortable or reach out to me. I'm more than happy to have a chat with you and move forward. But if you want to know more about the Natural Health Podcast and what we're up to and specials and bonuses from our guests, jump on the link below and join the Natural Health newsletter, and therefore you will be up to date with the latest research like I shared with you today here on the Natural Health Podcast. Do what you do best. Love, like, share the Natural Health Podcast. Mwah. And remember, the missing link between failure and success is your health. Content and information provided here is opinion of Mahela Ragoose and is for information purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. It is not intended to provide medical advice or take the place of medical advice or any current treatment you're undertaking. Consult your own medical professionals for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the Natural Health Podcast. It is advised that you consult your doctor or healthcare professional in relation to any health concerns you may be having. Mahela Ragoose does not take responsibility for any health consequences which occur from a person listening, viewing, or reading this content. Under no circumstances shall the Natural Health Podcast, Mahela Ragoose, any guest or contributor to the Natural Health Podcast, or any employees, associates, or affiliates of Mahela Ragoose be responsible for damages arising from the information provided on the Natural Health Podcast. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical conditions in either yourself or others. Please note, if you're taking prescription, do not stop your medication or start a new protocol, including but not limited to supplements, diet, lifestyle changes without consulting your doctor or healthcare professional. If you or any person has a medical concern, you should consult with your healthcare provider or seek other professional medical advice. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have read or heard on the Natural Health Podcast or in any linked materials. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. Neither Mahela Ragoose nor the publisher of this content takes responsibility for the possible health consequences of any person or persons reading or listening or following the information in the educational content.